Hello YouTube. This is How to Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. Rewritten it here in my own words. And I'm going to read it to you. We're on chapter 6 and this is Imagination. The workshop of the mind. The fifth step towards riches. The imagination is literally the workshop wherein all are fashioned the plans and created by man. The impulse of desire is given shape, form, and action through the aid of the imagination. And imaginative faculty of the mind. It has been said that man can create anything that he can imagine. Of all the ages of civilization, this is the most favorable of the development of the imagination because it is an age of rapid change. On every hand, one may contact stimuli which develop the imagination. Through the aid of the imaginative faculty, he has discovered and harnessed more of nature's forces during the past 50 years than during the entire human race previous to that time. He has conquered the air so completely that the birds are a poor match for him in flying. He has harnessed the ether and made it serve as a means of instantaneous communication with any part of the world. He has analyzed and weighed the sun of the distance of the millions of miles and has determined through the aid of the imaginative faculty the elements of which it all consists. He has discovered that his own brain is both a broadcasting and receiving station for the vibration of thought, and he is beginning to make practical use of his discovery. He has ever increase the speed of a locomotion until he may travel at the speed of more than 3,000 miles per hour. The time will soon come when, as man break fast in New York and lunch in San Francisco, he has merely discovered that he has an imagination and he has commenced to use it in a very elementary way. There are two forms of imagination. The imaginative faculty functions in two forms. One is known as synthetic imagination, and the other is creative imagination. Synthetic imagination, through this faculty, one may arrange old concepts, ideas, or plans into new combinations. This faculty creates nothing. It merely works with the material of the experience of education and observations which it is fed. It is the faculty used most by the inventor, with the exception of the genius who draws upon the creative imagination when a problem can't be solved through the synthetic imagination. Creative imagination. Through the faculty of creative imagination, the infinite mind of the man has direct communication with infinite intelligence. It is the faculty through which hunches and inspirations are received. It is by this faculty that all basic or new ideas are handed over to man. It is through this faculty that all the vibrations of the minds then of others are received. It is through this faculty that the mind may individually tune in and communicate with the subconscious minds of others. The creative imagination works automatically as described in these chapters. This faculty functions only when the conscious mind is vibrating at an exceedingly rapid rate, as for example when the conscious mind is stimulated through the emotion of a strong desire. The creative faculty becomes more alert, more receptive to vibrations of the sources mentioned in proportion to its development through use. This statement is significant. Ponder over it before passing on, and keep your mind as you follow these principles, that the entire story of why one may convert desire into money cannot be told in one statement. The story will be complete only when one has mastered and assimilated and began to use all of the principles. The great leaders of business, industry, finance, and the greatest artists, musicians, poets, and writers became great because they developed the faculty of the creative imagination. Both the synthetic and the creative faculties of the imagination become more alert with use, just as any muscle or organ or body development through use. Desire is only a thought impulse. It is abstract, that must be transformed into its physical counterpart. While with the synthetic imagination, it is one which will be most used frequently in the process of transforming thought impulses of desire into money. You must keep in mind the fact that you must face circumstances and situations which demand use of your creative imagination as well. It can be received and made alert through the use. Center your attention for the time being on the synthetic imagination and develop it, because this is the faculty which you will use more often in the process of converting money from your desire into the money. The transformation of this is intangible impulse of desire into the tangible reality of money. And it calls for a use of plan or plans. These plans must be formed with the aid of synthetic faculty. Read the entire book through, then come back to this chapter and begin at once to put your imagination at work on the building of a plan or plans for the transformation of the money you desire. Detailed instructions of the desire you oh my gosh, for the transformation of your desire into money. Detailed instructions for the building of your plans have been given in almost every chapter. Carry out the instructions best suited for your needs. Reduce the plan to writing. The moment you complete this, you will have definitely given concrete form to the intangible desire. Reading this once more, reading it aloud, and as you do so, remember that the moment you reduce this statement to your desire and plan for its realization to writing, you have actually taken the first series of steps which will enable you to convert through this physical counterpart, and through the earth in which you live, you yourself and every other material thing are the result of evolutionary change through the microscopic bits of matter that have been well organized and arranged in orderly fashion. Moreover, this statement is of stupendous importance. This earth and every other billions of individual cells of your body and every atom of matter began as an intangible form of energy. Desiring is a thought impulse. Thought impulses are forms of energy. When you begin with the thought impulse or desire to accumulate money, you are drafting the service from that same stuff that nature used in the creating of the earth and every material form in the universe, including the entire universe. And it consists of but two elements, matter and energy. Through the combination of energy and matter, there has been created, perceptible to man, from the largest star which floats in the heavens down to and reducing man himself. You are now engaged in a task of trying to profit by nature's method. You are adapting yourself to nature's laws by endeavoring to convert desire into its physical monetary equivalent. You can do it. It has been done before. You can build a fortune through the aid of the laws by which are immutable, but first you must become familiar with these laws and learn to use them. Through repetition and by approaching the description of the principles from every conceivable angle, the author hopes to reveal to you the secret through which every great fortune has been accumulated. Strange and paradoxical as it may seem, the secret is not a secret. Nature herself advertises it in the earth on which we live. The stars, the planets align with our view, and the elements above and around us, every blade of grass, every form of life within our vision. Nature advertises the secret in the terms of biology and the conversion of a tiny cell so small it might be lost on the point of a pin into a human being now reading this line. The conversion of desire into its physical equivalent is surely no more miraculous. Never become discouraged if you do not fully comprehend all that is being stated. It is constantly running in your mind, and it will help you put it all together. Proceed to be a student of the mind and assimilate the information being provided. You will in time make good progress. The principle which follow will open the way for understanding of imagination. Assimilate that which you understand as you read. This philosophy for the first time. When you reread and study it, you will discover that something has happened to clarify it and give you a broader understanding of the whole. Above all, do not stop nor hesitate in the study of the principles until you have read the book at least 3 times, for then you will not want to stop. How to make practical use of your imagination. How do you make practical use of your imagination? Ideas are the beginning points of all fortunes. Ideas are products of the imagination. Let us examine a few well-known ideas which have yielded huge fortunes with the hope of these illustrations, which will convey definite information concerning the method by which imagination may be used in accumulating riches. And here's a story. Here's a story for you all. The Enchanted Kettle. 50 years ago, an old country doctor drove to town, hitched his horse quietly, slipped into a drugstore by the back door, and began flirting with the young woman drug clerk. His mission was destined to yield great wealth to many people. It was destined to bring to the South the most far-flung benefits since the Civil War. For more than an hour, behind the prescription counter, the old doctor and clerk talked in low tones. Then the doctor left. He went out to a buggy and brought back a large old-fashioned kettle. and a big wooden paddle used for stirring the contents of the kettle, and deposited them in the back of the store. The clerk inspected the kettle, reached into his side pocket, took out a roll of bills, and handed it over to the doctor. The roll contained exactly $500, the clerk's entire savings. The doctor handed over a small slip of paper on which was written a secret formula. The words on that small slip of paper were worth a king's ransom, but not to the doctor. Those magic words needed to start the kettle to boiling, but neither the doctor nor the jug clerk knew what fabulous fortunes were destined to flow from that kettle. The old doctor was glad to sell the outfit for $500. No money would pay off his debts and give him freedom of mind. The clerk was taking a big chance by staking his entire life savings on a mere scrap of paper and an old kettle. He had never dreamed that his investment would start a kettle to overflowing with gold that would surpass his miraculous flow of Aladdin's lamp. What clerk really purchased was an idea. The old kettle, the wooden paddle, and the secret message on a slip of paper were incidental. The strange performance of the kettle began to take place after the new owner mixed the secret instructions of the ingredient in which the doctor knew nothing. Read the story carefully, give your imagination a test. See if you can discover what it was that the young man added to the secret message which caused the kettle to overflow with gold. Remember, as you read this is not a story of Arabian Nights. Here you have a story of facts, stranger than fiction, facts which began in the form of an idea. Let us take a look at the vast fortunes of gold this idea has produced. It has paid and still pays huge fortunes to men and women all over the world who distribute contents of the kettle to millions of people. The old kettle is now one of the world's largest consumers of sugar, this providing jobs of a permanent nature to thousands of men and women engaged in growing sugarcane and in refining and marketing sugar. The old kettle consumes annually millions of glass bottles, providing jobs to huge numbers of glass workers. The old kettle gives permanent employment to an army of clerks, copywriters, and advertising experts throughout the nation. It has brought fame and fortune to scores of artists who have created magnificent pictures describing the product. The old kettle has converted a small southern city in the business capital of the South, where it now benefits directly or indirectly every business and practically every resident of the city. The influence of this idea now benefits every civilized country in the world, pouring out a continuous stream of gold to all who touch it from the kettle, built upon the mains of one of the most prominent colleges of the South, where thousands of young people receive training essential for success. The kettle has done other marvelous things all through the world. Through all circumstances, when others followed, the owner of the enchanted kettle went marching on, giving continuous employment to an army of men and women all over the world, and who pay out extra portions of gold to those who long ago had faith in the idea. If the product of that old brass kettle could talk, it would tell thrilling tales of romance in every language, romances of love, romances of business, romances of professionals who are daily being stimulated by it. The author is sure at least of one such romance which was a part of it, and it all began not far from the very spot on which the drug clerk purchased the old kettle. It was here that the author met his wife, and it was who first told him that the enchanted kettle, it was a product of the kettle, and they were drinking when they asked him to accept him for better or for worse. Now that you know the content of the enchanted kettle is a world-famous drink, it is fitting that the author confessed that the home of the city of the drink supplied him with his wife, and that drink itself provides him with the stimulation of thought without intoxication, and thereby serves to give the refreshment of mind which an author must have to do his best work. Whoever you are, wherever you may live, whatever occupations you may be engaged in, just remember in the future, every time you see the words Coca-Cola, that the vast empire of wealth and influence grew out of a single idea, and that the mysterious ingredient of that clerk, Astos Candler, mixed with the secret formula was imagination. Stop and think of that for a moment. Remember also that the 13 steps of riches described in this book were a media through which influence of Coca-Cola has been extended to every city, town, village, and crossroad of the world, and that any idea you may create, as sound and mysterious as Coca-Cola, it has the possibility of duplication of the stupendous record, this worldwide thirst killer. Truly, thoughts are things, and their scope of operation in the world is itself. What I would do if I had $1 million. What I would do if I had $1 million. What I would do if I had $1 million. This story proves the truth that the old saying, where there's a will, there's a way. It was told to me by the beloved educator, the late Frank Gonzalez, who began his preaching career in the Stockyards regions of South Chicago. While Gonzalez was going through college, he observed many defects in our educational system. He had a belief that he could be corrected if he had the college. His deepest desire was to become the directing head of an educational institution in which young men and women would be taught to learn by doing. He made up his mind to organize a new college in which he could carry out his ideas without being handicapped by orthodox methods of education. He needed $1 million to put the project across. Where was he to lay his hands on such a large sum of money? That was the question that absorbed most of this ambitious young preacher's thought. But it couldn't seem to make any progress. Every night he took that thought to bed with him. He got up with it in the morning. He took it with him everywhere he went. He turned it over in his mind over and over and over and over again until it became a burning obsession within him. $1 million is a lot of money. He recognized that fact, but he also recognized the truth that the only limitation is in one which one sets up in their own mind. The philosopher, as his preacher, Dr. Gonzalez, recognized also as all who succeed in life. Oh my God. I'm really reading this. Where are we? As all who do succeed in life. That definition of purpose is the starting point from which one must begin. He recognized too that definition of purpose takes on animation in life, and the power, when backed by a burning desire to translate that purpose into its material equivalent. He knew all the great truths, yet he did not know where or how to lay his hands on $1 million. The natural person would have been like giving up and, by saying, well, my idea was good enough, but I can't do anything with it because I can't procure the necessarily $1 million. And that is exactly what a majority of people do and would have said, but it is not what Dr. Gonzalez said. What he said and what he did are so important that I will now introduce him and let him speak for himself. One Saturday afternoon, I sat in my room thinking of ways of means of raising the money to carry out my plans. For nearly 2 years, I had been thinking, but I had nothing but think. The time had come for action. I made up my mind then and there that I would get the necessary $1 million within a week. How? I was not concerned about that. The main importance was the decision to get the money within a specified time, and I want to tell you that the moment I reached a definite decision to get the money within a specified time, a strange feeling of assurance came over me, such I had never experienced. Something inside me said, why didn't you reach that decision a long time ago? The money's been waiting for you the whole time. Things began to happen in a hurry. I called the newspapers and announced I would preach the sermon immediately, but I must tell you frankly, the task was not difficult because I have been preparing a sermon for almost 2 years. The Spirit back of me, the Spirit was back part of me. Long before midnight, I had finished my sermon. I went to bed and slept with a feeling of confidence, for I could see myself already in possession of the $1 million. Next morning, I arose early, went into the bathroom to read the sermon, and then knelt on my knees and asked for that sermon, and the night for the attention of someone who could supply the money I need. While I was praying, I had the feeling and assurance that the money would be forthcoming. In my excitement, I walked out without my sermon and did not discover the oversight until I was about and ready to begin delivering it. It was my late to back for my notes, and what a blessing that I couldn't go back. Instead, my subconscious mind yielded the material I needed. When I arose to begin my sermon, I closed my eyes and spoke with all my heart and soul of my dreams. I not only talked to the audience, but I also fancy talked to God. I told what I would do with $1 million if that amount were placed in my hands. I described the plan I had in my mind for organizing great educations, where young people would learn to do practical things and at the same time develop their minds. When I had finished and sat down, a man slowly arose from a seat about 3 rows from the rear and made his way. I wondered what he was going to do. He came into his mental movie that he had been running in his depths of the mind without even realizing it. A man offered, "I like your sermon. I believe you can do everything you said you would if you had $1 million. And to prove that I believe in your sermon and I will come, you must come to my office tomorrow morning. I will give you $1 million. My name is Philip D. Armour." Young Gonzalez went to Mr. Armour's office and $1 million was presented to him. With the money he founded the Armour Institute of Technology. That is more money than the majority of preachers ever see in their entire lifetime. Yet the thought impulse back of the money was created in a young preacher's mind in a fraction of a minute. The necessary $1 million came as a result of an idea. Back of the idea was a desire which young Gonzalez had been nursing in his mind for almost 2 years. Observe this important fact. He got the money within 36 hours after he reached a definite decision in his mind to get it and decide upon a definite plan for acquiring it. There was nothing new or unique about young Gonzalez's vague thinking of $1 million and weekly hoping for it. Others before him had many thoughts of this nature and had similar thoughts, but there's something very unique and different about the decision he reached on the memorable Saturday when he put vagueness in the background and definitely said, "I will get that money within a week." God seems to throw himself on the side of the man who knows exactly what it is that he wants, and he is determined to get just that. Moreover, the principle which Dr. Gonzalez got his $1 million is still alive. It is still available to you. And this universal law is workable today as if it was when the young preacher made use of it so successfully. This book describes step by step the 13 elements of this great law and suggests how they may be put to use. Observe that Asa Candler and Dr. Frank Gonzalez had characteristics in common. Both knew the astounding truth that ideas could be transmuted into cash through the power of definite purpose plus definite plans. If you are one of those who believe that hard work and honesty alone will bring riches, perish through thought. It is not true. Riches, when they come in huge quantities, are never the result of hard work. Riches only come in the response to definite demands based on application and definite principles of laws. Generally speaking, an idea is an impulsive thought that impels action by an appeal to the imagination. All master salesmen know that ideas can be sold where merchandise cannot be. The publisher of books which sells for a nickel made the discovery that should be worth much to the publishers generally. He learned that many people who buy titles and not contents of books, as merely changing the name of one book that was not moving, his sales on that book jumped upward more than 1 million copies. The inside of the book was not changed in any way. He merely ripped off the cover, bearing the title that did not sell, and put on a cover with a title that had box office value. That is as simple as it may seem, and it was an idea. It was imagination. There is no standard on price on ideas. The creator of ideas makes his own price, and if he is smart, he gets it. The moving picture industry created a whole flock of millionaires. Most of them had the imagination to recognize ideas when they saw them. The next flock of millionaires will grow out of the radio business, which is new and not overburdened with men of keen imagination. The money will be made by those who discover and of creative radio programs and have the imagination to recognize merit and to give radio listeners a chance to profit by it. The sponsor, the unfortunate victim who pays the cost of the radio's entertainment, soon will become conscious and demand something for his money. The man who beats the sponsor to the jaw and supplies programs that render useful service is the man that will become rich in this new industry. Light chatter artists who now pollute the air with silly giggles will go away, and their places will be taken by real artists who have interpret carefully and plan programs which have been designed to service the minds of men as well as provide entertainment. Here's a wide open field of opportunity screaming its way and being butchered because of the lack of imagination, and begging for rescue at any price. Above all, the radio needs new ideas. If this new field of opportunity intrigues you, perhaps you might profit by the suggestion that the successful radio programs of the future will be given more attention to creating buyer audiences and less attention to listener audiences. Stated more plainly, the builder of radio programs who succeeds in the future must key his features so that he can definitely show his effect upon the audiences. Sponsors are becoming a bit wary. Based up the statements and grabbed out of thin air. They want to go in the future and will demand indisputable proof that Hearsit programs not only give millions of people with silly giggles ever, but the silly giggler can sell merchandise. Another thing that might as well be understood by those who contemplate entering this new field of opportunity of radio advertising is going to be handled by an entirely new group of advertising experts, separate and distinct from the old time in the advertising game. Cannot read in modern radio scripts because they have been schooled to see ideas. The new radio techniques demand men who can interpret ideas from a written manuscript. And in terms of sound, it costs the author a year of hard labor and many thousands of dollars to learn this. Radio might know it now as about where the moving picture or where Pickford and her curls first appeared on the screen. There is plenty of room in radio for those who can produce and recognize ideas. If the comment intrigued you in the slightest degree, then go further and you may find that one idea is just right around the corner to round out your career. Never let anything discourage you if you have no experience in the radio, because Andrew Carnegie knew very little about making steel. I have Carnegie's own word for this. But he made practical use of the two principles described in this book and made steel business yield him a fortune. The story of practically every great fortune starts with the day when a creator of ideas and a seller of ideas get together and work in harmony. Carnegie surrounded himself with men who can do all that he could not do, and men who created ideas, and men who put ideas into operation and made themselves and others fabulously rich. Millions of people go through life hoping for favorable breaks. Perhaps a favorable break can get one an opportunity, but the safest plan is not to depend on luck. It was a favorable break that gave Hill the biggest opportunity of his life, but 25 years of determined effort had to be devoted to the opportunity before it became an asset. The break consisted of good fortune and meeting and getting cooperation of Andrew Carnegie, and that the occasion Andrew Carnegie planted in Hill's mind the idea of organizing the principles of achievement into a philosophy of excess, where thousands of people profited by the discoveries and made 25 years of research, and several fortunes have been accumulated through this application of this philosophy. The beginning was simple. It was an idea which anyone might have developed. The favorable right came through Carnegie, but what about the determination and definiteness of purpose and the desire to attain the goal and the persistent effort of 25 years? It was no ordinary desire that survived. It was a burning desire, an obsession. When the idea was first planted into Hill's mind by Mr. Carnegie, it was coaxed, nursed, and enticed and remained alive. Gradually, the idea became a giant under its own power, and it coaxed, nursed, and drove me. Ideas are like that. First, you give life action and guidance and ideas, then they take on the power of their own and sweep aside all opposition. Ideas are intangible forces, but they have more power than the physical brains that give birth to them. They have the power to live on after the brain that creates them has returned to dust. For example, take the power of Christianity that began with a simple idea born in the brains of Christ. Its chief tenet was, do unto others as you would have done others unto you. Christ has gone back to the source from which he came, but his idea still goes marching on. Someday it may grow up and come into its own, then it will have fulfilled Christ's deepest desire. The idea has been developing for only 2,000 years. Give it time. Because success requires no explanation and failure permits no alibis. That was chapter 6, Imagination, How to Think and Grow Rich, by Napoleon Hill, written in my own words here, and read to you. Hope you got some information, and my name is Devin, and thank you.